Sandra, let's bring in Derek Maltz. He's the former special agent in charge for the DEA Special Operations Division. Derek, when you and I first met more than 11 years ago now, you were involved in a DEA operation in the wake of Jaime Zapata's killing on the road between Monterrey and Mexico City. That was a case of mistaken identity where he and Victor Avila, both ICE agents working for Homeland Security investigations, were mistaken for drug cartel members. Jaime Zapata was shot and killed. It's only gotten worse since then.
Absolutely, John. I mean, I want to know, did I miss something? Where is President Biden on the world announcement on this latest incident of killing Americans and torturing and kidnapping them in Mexico? So they're killing mass amounts of kids all over America every day, 200,000 under Joe Biden's watch, right? Dying from poisonous drugs. But what I don't understand, John, is like the latest press secretary announcement, very deceptive to the American public. She basically said to Peter Doocy that we have historic levels, low levels of fentanyl at the border because of the great work of the president. The Homeland Security Director, he's talking about operational control of the border. Meanwhile, it's the Wild West. When President Reagan was in the White House, and when our agent died in Mexico, he all but shut down the border. That's what we need, leadership like that, John.
Yeah, Kiki Camarena is the agent that you're referring to. One of the reasons why there is so much more fentanyl being seized in this country is because there's so much more coming in. The border officials we've talked to, Derek, say we are only interdicting a small fraction of what's out there. So then the big question is how to deal with these drug cartels. Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas wants an authorization for the use of military force. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana a short time ago said they want to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Listen to Senator Graham.
That if there were an ISIS or Al-Qaeda cell in Mexico that lobbed a rocket into Texas, we'd wipe them off the planet. They're doing that times thousands.
Do you think that is the way to attack this situation, is to designate them as foreign terrorist organizations and potentially use the U.S. military to go after them?
John, that would be my preference, just watching these guys grow from drug cartels to narco-terrorists. But I have to say this. I really don't care what we call them because Washington bureaucracy doesn't want to accept that they're terrorists. They're killing more Americans than any terrorist organization. So that's okay. So let's call them drug cartels. Let's call them transnational criminals. But let's apply the appropriate response because it's the biggest threat to this country day to day, killing more Americans than anyone else. John, in the old days, we had the Homeland Security color coding. Well, we have a red alert on the Mexican cartels. So what are we doing about it? We're lying to the public from the White House about the severity of the threat. We're not talking about fentanyl poisoning like we should. We're not educating the kids. We're not mandating the Department of Education, go out to the schools. So, again, I don't want to get caught up in the 5 years ago, I started asking for the declaration of these guys as terrorists. I testified in the Ohio, Congress and got almost a unanimous vote in favor of it. But here's the problem, John. The bureaucrats in Washington, they were able to convince President Trump to back away from going after them as terrorists. So what do we call them, John? Now it's going to be semantics.
Hey, one quick question, if I could, to you, Derek. When we first met more than 11 years ago, you showed me on your phone some horrific pictures of what cartels do to their victims. We know that two of these Americans who survived were tortured for a number of days. We don't know the extent of their injuries. But there are going to be thousands of young people who are heading to Mexico over spring break, families as well. What do you say to people who are considering making trips into these border towns?
First of all, forget the border towns. You're crazy to go there. Spend a little bit more money and go to a U.S. destination or go to the Caribbean, go to the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. Stay out of Mexico because the threat level is a red and it's very dangerous, and don't go near the border towns. Forget that.
All right. Derek Maltz, always good to get your take on things. Really appreciate it. Good to see you again. Thank you.